name is Christina Jamison and I'm from the School of Home Ownership. Today's interview I have a special guest, Debbie Lin, who is a financial planner, and we'll be talking about something that's very particular to our sandwich generation. That's my generation, who you're looking after kids and will be looking after your elderly parents. So Debbie, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in your company.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks for having me. My name's Debbie Lin. I'm financial planner, advisor. They go hand in hand. Independent financial advisor, so I call myself like a GP of advice, bit of everything. However, I specialise in aged care advice as well.
So this is a very big unknown for me. Now, we've heard something vaguely about have to sell your parents' property to look after your parents if they're going to aged care. But could you give us a very basic overview about aged care in terms of how it works?
As basic as I can, because the federal government regulates the aged care industry in Australia, so there's nothing basic about it. However, you pay two types of costs, basically. You pay for their care and you pay for their accommodation or their bed. There's rules and regulations around it and how much you pay, depending on how much you can afford to pay and what facility that you choose. So that's where advice comes in. There's always options on how best to fund aged care. And at a time, usually when it's really stressful, somebody, your loved one's not well, they may be in hospital, you may have been told they can't go home, scrambling to what to do, that's when aged care advice comes in handy, and that we can help take the stress of how best to pay for their care and assist in that.
And that's the scary bit, because I just keep hearing people having to sell the home, and we were just talking about some figures, and if I've got this right, you're looking at, for a house, say around, now we talked about Ferndale, which is a nursing home around the St. George area. We're talking about, how much did you say?
Off the top of my head, it's $600,000 to $800,000, a lump sum payment for the bed. Yes.
Which I just think that's amazing, because, you're looking at buying property, that's my field, and you're looking at getting a unit for $600,000, and you're talking about a bed that's, I assume, for the whole time, like they just calculate what it's going to be for their whole life or life expectancy.
I don't know how it's calculated, to be honest, Christina,
like
but yeah, it is very expensive, but there are ways to pay for the care. It is expensive, but there are different options depending on your circumstances.
And could you just give us a few examples of those circumstances?
So it ranges from, if you really don't have any assets and you're on full age pension, and for example, say mum and dad are still alive, but mum needs to go into care, but dad still lives in the home and they're on the full age pension, then they wouldn't have to pay that kind of lump sum. They would then be considered a government supported, and they would end up paying only the basic daily care fee, which is $56 a day, and likely not have to pay anything else. And
that, just to interrupt, that comes from the pension, because people keep saying that the pension pays for stuff. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Everybody says, oh, they take my pension. Do they take my pension? No, they don't take your pension, but the $56 a day is calculated at 85% of the full age pension, a single full age pension. So that's how it's calculated. So they don't take your pension. Centrelink will continue to pay your pension, but then the facility will then charge you fees that would come out of your bank account every month.
Okay, because that's one of the questions that I had, but I guess if you're getting everything paid for, then basically you're just getting pocket money for anything else that you wanted to do.
Yes, there's not much left over. So that's at the low means end. At the upper end, if the government assesses that you have the ability to contribute to your care, you will pay a whole lot more. You will pay anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 for a bed up to over $1 million. The one I did recently was just over $1 million. You'll pay your basic daily care fee, the $56. Everybody pays that. You will pay a means tested care fee because the government says, well, you can afford to contribute to your care. And if it's a flash upmarket aged care facility, they will also charge you an extra service charge, and that could be $30, $35 a day. So you could easily be, at the top end, you could easily be paying $150 a day for care. And then you pay the lump sum, the $1 million on top of that.
So $150 a day, which is quite costly. And then what about medication? That's not covered? Is that what you use the pocket money, I suppose, from the pension?
The difference, yes, they may need to pay prescription medicines on top, haircut, some clothing, some out-of-pocket expenses is what would be left over.
Okay, so if you take us through some examples of different scenarios that, we could find ourselves in.
So, well, that was the low assets end. At the other extreme is if you can afford to pay, as I say, it could be $500,000 lump sum payment for the bed, it could be $1 million, and you have all the care costs on top of that. So it could be very expensive. And then usually somewhere in between, the dilemma is, do we need to sell the home? Do we rent it out? Do we keep it unoccupied? All those decisions come into play, and that's where advice comes in, because I can model those scenarios and show them what that might look like. Because although we strive to give the best outcome financially, sometimes people don't always choose that one. Sometimes if they want to keep the home for the family, it may not be the best financial outcome, but they want to keep it in the family, so they choose not to sell it. They may choose not to rent, even though they want, potentially they could benefit from the rental income. However, it's just too hard getting rid of mum's furniture and getting the home up to speed to rent, so they may choose not to do that. But at least they can see what the scenarios are. Can they afford it? How long till the money runs out? All those things. So there's lots of options to consider when choosing the best way to pay, and that's the key takeout, really.
So using examples, what are things that we can learn? So you're talking about even before we get to this point, discussing with siblings. So if you could take us through some advice, like practical advice.
So the practical advice is if you think your parents may be getting frail or ill, to start having those conversations and to start preparing, for scenarios and what might happen. Having, wills, your estate plans up to date, see a solicitor, get your power of attorney, guardianship, so somebody can make those medical decisions if required. Having all that paperwork in place is vital. Otherwise, you're applying to courts and it's even worse. So, and then just having those conversations with siblings.
So, if you can go through some real examples that that we could find ourselves in.
So, there's the scenarios of sort of not discussing with the family beforehand, and being thrust into that situation where mum's had a fall, she's gone into hospital, the daughter's been caring for her for 10 years. The doctors say she can't go home, she needs to go into care. And, the brother that lives in Darwin pops up and says, what do you mean we need to sell the home? And suddenly isn't happy with that scenario. That's where advice comes in, where we can show them, well, these are the scenarios, these are the options to pay for mum's care. What do you want to do? So just having those conversations just keeps everybody on board and alleviates some of the discussions and the disagreements that often happen in those situations.
So thank you for that, Debbie. So in short, just get advice and look at all our options. So be well informed and try to prepare at an earlier stage. So thank you for that. So if we want to get in contact with you and get information, how do we go about that?
Go to our website, which is liquidityfp, financialplanning.com.au.
So if you want more information and resources, go to schoolofhomeownership.com.au. Thank you.